Welcome into another episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. I am Will Thomas, and we have got the first weekend recap from March Madness. Now, those 4 days, sure, there wasn't that Cinderella, but to me, it gave us everything we could have asked for. It was incredible basketball, especially that second round. So let's just get straight into it. And obviously, the biggest headline is that the Florida Gators are going home. The one seed out of the South, they lost to Iowa 73-72 last night, and the Gators are going home after getting to play that game in Tampa against the 9 seed Hawkeyes. And there's really nowhere to go except for the fact that, Ben McCollum outcoached Todd Golden. Iowa's bigs beat up on Florida's bigs, which is really just not something that we're used to seeing anybody be able to do to Florida. But especially when you were looking at this game, like Iowa should not have been able to match up with the Gators down low. But they had the same amount of rebounds. Iowa actually won the points in the paint 32-30. So you saw Florida's biggest advantage all year, which was their big guys, Condon, Chinny, Luhanlock, and Hauk. They were neutralized by Iowa. And I mean, Iowa, they shot 51%, 29% from three. It was nothing special. They just beat Florida up, which was kind of jarring to see after what we saw from this past year. But then you go to those last two plays, how Florida was pressed up with 9 seconds left, knowing that a two ties you, a three kills you. It seemed like a bad idea at first, but the fact that Golden then went out and said, his strategy there was to foul. He wanted to foul whoever got the ball because then you're forcing two pressure free throws, and worst case scenario, you're going to overtime with 5 more minutes to play as the better team, kind of with the momentum. They had won that second half up to that point, but Sturge got away. I don't know which one of the guards maybe blew their assignment, but they tried to foul. Sturge got away, and then you had Hauk in that pinch where he just couldn't guard both, and credit to Fulgaris for knocking down that shot. And then for Florida's offensive possession, I don't mind the idea of driving, dump it off to a guy down low because you get either a close look, maybe you even get a whistle. Just needed half a second more. It just wasn't enough time for that play. So for the Gators, the coaching down the stretch, I don't hate it, but it just wasn't executed very well. And for Florida, the guard play kind of came back to got him. Xavier Lee played a good game. He shot the ball very well, but like Boogie Fland on that drive in the last minute, lost the ball out of bounds, turnover. Couldn't make that play down the stretch on that last possession. The Florida team won the championship last year, didn't have those problems, and this one did, and it bit them really, really early. But Iowa is moving on to play Nebraska now in the Sweet 16. We thought maybe this was going to be Florida versus Vanderbilt round 3. Instead, they're both going home. So we get a Big Ten matchup in the Sweet 16 in Houston. And for the Gators looking forward, I mean, obviously, it's not the end of the world. It feels like it right now. But a lot of Gator fans need to remember this team was dominant all year. Everybody loved everybody on this roster. Everybody loved Golden. You lost a game in March. This is not the first time that a one seed has lost in the second weekend. Does it make in the first weekend? Excuse me. Does it make it hurt any less? Not really. But the reality check of the world isn't actually ending. It's there, and it'll come as the days go on. But for the rest of the tournament, we are officially down our first one seed in the Florida Gators. Let's go to a more amped up story, and that is the Texas Longhorns, who are on a run to the Sweet 16. And there's the debate about whether or not this counts as a Cinderella. And I get the basic argument of a school like Texas in the SEC with as much money as they have doesn't really apply to the normal Cinderella logic. But everybody's crying about how we don't have any double-digit seeds advancing. So how about you take advantage of the 11 seed who's advancing from Dayton? They've won 3 games, and they're now going to play Purdue. This Texas team, coming down the stretch in the regular season, I thought they were really good. I thought they were really dangerous. You had a bunch of coaches in the SEC who were, locks and top seeds in the tournament saying, I don't want to see them in March. And you're seeing that play out. The Horns are going to get Purdue. They have to go to California to play it because why not? But Texas, they're playing good basketball right now. You have Sean Miller as their head coach, who has been here before. He has this experience. This Texas team is going to be dangerous. And Purdue, they were struggling a lot in February, early March, but then they caught fire going to win the Big Ten tournament, and they've looked very good in their first 2 games. Neither of those two versions of Purdue, the bad one who was dropping games left and right, and this incredibly hot stretch where they won the conference tournament, those aren't, those are the end of these for Purdue basketball. So if Purdue comes back to the middle, all of a sudden you've got a game. If Purdue plays how they played to beat Michigan, that second half against Miami, all that, I don't love their chances. But at some point, I think you might see a bit of a dip back towards that mean for Purdue, where Texas could really strike you. Because Tremont Mark and Dalen Swain are just big shot makers. Vokietitis is such a menace down low. Texas has got a good shot to at least keep this game close with Purdue and then move on to the Elite Eight to potentially play Arizona or Arkansas. So this Texas team, sure, you don't want to call them a Cinderella because they're from the SEC. They have all this money. That's fine. You can still have a good time watching an 11 seed make this run, right? Especially when we're seeing all these other top 4 seeds, I mean, mainly just the Florida Gators, drop before we even get there. But so moving on to a team that they might play in the Elite if they both win is the Arkansas Razorbacks. You're seeing Darius Acuff do exactly what we hoped he might do in the NCAA tournament. I mean, he's just taking over. He had 24 points against Hawaii, but he had 36 against High Point. He's not even doing this with making threes. That's 60 points so far through 2 tournament games. He's only made 5 threes. He's shooting just below 50% from the field overall. This guy is such a good, it's just an elite scorer of the basketball. There's all the talk about, where does he stack up compared to other Calipari guards? He sure is hell outside of the top 3. I mean, this guy is playing such good basketball, and the other guys around him, like Brazil, Malik Thomas, and how well he can shoot and score the ball. The defense is definitely a problem for Arkansas overall. I mean, also just, Acuff. But as long as you're just outscoring dudes, it's fine. But when you go up against Arizona here in this Sweet 16, which is going to be out in California, more in Arizona's neck of the woods, you're going to have to be able to step up defensively a little bit. Now, Arizona got a bit of a scare from Utah State. It wasn't close down the stretch. They won the game by 12, but it was within reach for a good chunk of that second half. So we know that Arizona is gettable. And with Florida falling, we know that 1 seeds are gettable. The gap between the 1 seeds is not the same as it was last year. It's just not. So for Arkansas, you just kind of have to trust your offense. Trust that you know that you can score with anybody. You have maybe the best player in the country in Darius Acuff. So regardless of how this game goes for Arkansas against Arizona, I have a hard time believing that they don't score the ball really well and that they don't have that they don't put together a really fun product. But Calipari in the tournament is not really something that anybody wants to see, especially not with the caliber of player that he has on this Razorbacks team. Arkansas could be a Final Four team. They could easily be Final Four good. But obviously their biggest hump is coming up next when they play Arizona. Alabama is also rolling. They decapitated Texas Tech late last night in Tampa. I'm not sure how many people stayed up to watch that game, but now they draw Michigan. They also have a 1 seed. And they got to play Michigan in Chicago. It will be a Michigan-leaning crowd. Obviously, they're the 1 seed. That makes sense. And they're doing this without Aiden Holloway. Bama is. Obviously, we know all that happened with Holloway. We knew he wasn't going to play this first weekend. I'd be shocked if over the next few days we get momentum to where he then comes back in place, because he hasn't been with the team. It's not like he's just been suspended but still practicing, still on the bench. He hasn't been there. Aiden Holloway, I think, is done for this year, at least. So you don't have as much depth at guard. How much is that going to bite them once they go up against a really good team at full strength? Because Texas Tech, really good team. They weren't at full strength. They've been fighting with depth issues even before they lost Toppin. So I'm not discrediting the win. It was a very impressive win, and you're seeing what Bama's offense can do when they get hot. They scored 90 in both these first tournament games. But the loss of Holloway is going to bite you at some point. I'm a little afraid that this could be the game against Michigan where it happens. And, the Wolverines are favored by 10.5 right now. That's the opening line. So it's telling you that Bama, will have a few jabs in them, but they probably won't have that knockout punch. I mean, I'll probably be cheering for Alabama because of how fun that offense is, how electric it is to watch all those shots fall. Bama's going to have to shoot an unbelievable clip from 3. And they're going to have to get it from guys who are going to have to play above their mean. Now, could it happen? Absolutely it could. This is why I labeled Bama as one of my most dangerous teams in the country a few weeks ago. Because they have all these guys who, if it's a perfect storm when it all comes together, they can score 108, and there's nothing that anybody in the country can do about it. So if all those guys can just play above their normal game for 40 minutes, making shots, dare I say, getting a stop on defense, I think you could see Alabama compete with Michigan, at least scare them. And if enough shots fall, they could beat them. So Bama against Michigan could be a solid one. But then the final team that we're going to talk about here are the Tennessee Volunteers. I thought that they could make a run. I thought that the bracket filled out where they could get through this first weekend And now they have. They beat Miami of Ohio. They beat Virginia. Now they get to draw Iowa State. This game is also in Chicago in the United Center. Tennessee's only opened up as a 4.5 point dog. So this game should be good. It's going to be physical. I mean, this game is going. After this game, the ice baths are going to run out of ice. This is going to be a physical, who wants it more game between between two teams who really want to emphasize rebounding, getting after it defensively. Rick Barnes versus T.J. Altenberger is awesome. And one thing I worry about with Tennessee, Nate Ament didn't make a ton of great plays down the stretch against Virginia. Or I guess, sorry, he had some plays that were like, okay, you're a freshman. It's really hard to grow past that in 1 week, when you're on this stage. And Ament's a great player. I think he's going to do great things in this game against Iowa State. Can he avoid a mistake? Can he avoid a weird decision that can maybe cost the Vols a position? Because Jacoby Gillespie, he was in the Sweet 16 with Maryland last year. I trust him. I trust his veteran leadership. Rick Barnes, I trust him up until the Elite Eight because he'll lose the Elite Eight game. But, I mean, most of Tennessee is experienced. They're big. If you rely on Nate Ament and he makes another mistake or bad decision, it can kill you. And it will kill you against Iowa State. But this game should be awesome. With that number at 4.5, I would expect you to see a lot of bets come in on Iowa State. So if the books want that early, that can be some optimism for Vol fans. But that game's going to be sick. And Tennessee, sure, they're a 6 seed. They don't have that's a Kai Ziegler anymore. They don't have that Chaz Lanier necessarily like they did last year. This team was always dangerous. I thought that Virginia was always not, fool's gold because they were a great team, but the ACC was just horrible. So that's why I thought that Tennessee could make a run. And here in the Sweet 16, they got a shot to get to the Elite Eight to play against maybe Alabama again. It'd be pretty cool if we could get Tennessee, Alabama to both upset Michigan and Iowa State to get to the Elite Eight against each other. But the Vols making a run. They are back in the Sweet 16 because what is a tournament without Rick Barnes in the Sweet 16? And that'll do it for the first weekend recap. I'll be doing game previews for the Sweet 16 all this upcoming week. We just gotta soak this in while we still have it, guys. I mean, this is the best time of year having this tournament, getting the first weekend out of the way. Now we get to lock in on these elite heavy hitter matchups. So thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. I've been Will Thomas, and I will see you next time.